Hey, this is Brian, the main contributor to the Smart Connections Obsidian plugin, and I'm about to go through the different GitHub issues that I have been unable to respond to. It takes a lot of time to read through the issues and formulate a good response, so I'm hoping that by recording my process, you can see what I'm thinking as I'm coming up with the response, and hopefully that will provide you with more insights on what the future of smart connections look like, and also answer whatever questions it is that you had in the issue itself. Thanks for watching, and let's get started. Okay, issue number 175, feature request. Capability of syncing chat history with Obsidian Sync. I'm happy to report that this has been completed. So, chat history is syncable as of the latest versions. Additionally, the folder for chat history is also configurable. And the reason why that matters, I mean, besides you probably just don't want, my opinionated folder naming, storing your notes, your chat history notes. It's notable because it's going to allow you to prevent syncing of your chat history. So I know that maybe for most of you, syncing the chat history is a good thing. The reason it was not syncable before is because the chat history was located within the Smart Connections embedding folder. It has, since, as I mentioned, it's configurable, so it's in a separate folder which defaults to smart-chats. And from there, you rename it whatever you want, but importantly, if you prefix a period in the name of the folder, you can hide the folder from Obsidian Sync. And I believe that hides it from, Obsidian within your vault as well. So syncing chat history available. It is, and you can also configure whether you want it to sync or not using that period prefix. Chat trigger for Chinese. I think that this might already be implemented. Let's check out the translations file. So, no, it is not implemented. Okay, so I'm going to link. So, relevant file. So, you might have already heard my stance on the enabling compatibility for various languages. So, what I feel like my obligation is to make those opportunities to contribute translations. It's my obligation to make that easy. But I do not plan on implementing those translations myself. I speak only one language well, and so I'm not qualified to make those translations. That's about it. And I think that contributing translations is a great, easy way for someone to contribute to the broader Smart Connections community. So, there's that relevant file in case you're interested. There might already even be a pull request in here for that. Let me just double check. Okay. Let's see. It looks like there is. See, I don't know. This was probably contributed prior to the translation being extracted into its own file. Let's see if any of these other pull requests work. Yeah, same thing. Maybe if somebody wants to go in, there's quite a few translations here. So the link, I'm gonna add a second link in here. Relevant file. Let's see. So multiple available requests can be used to easily contribute using the new file referenced above. Just, so we got that one. Make multiple links here. I don't know. Somebody might catch that. That's the best I got for this one. Enhancement. I do think it's really important, but like I said, I need to manage my time, and so by not doing this myself, I'm hoping to encourage more contributions. It's unfortunate. There's like a bunch of these. So it's 2023. This is May 21st. That might be able to be implemented into the correct file. Yep. See. Okay. So that would be easy to merge, but I'm not going to do that right now in the video. Just a note about contributions. I think so. Like the translations are one thing. It's easy to quick make that pull request. But like if you are thinking about contributing anything more significantly, and if you think the way to do it is in the Smart Connections plugin repository, I want to warn you that that's probably a misstep. So while there's still a lot of logic located in the Smart Connections plugin repository, I think that the bulk of the significant the logic that isn't specific to Obsidian. So like if you're adding a command to Obsidian, okay, that goes in the Obsidian plugin repository. But if you are adding an action for the smart chat, or if you are, I mentioned in another video that like even the translations, I think that those are going to get moved over to the JS Brains repository to be determined. But basically, if you're thinking about making a contribution and you think that the best way to do it is via the plugin repository, please reach out to me, explain what it is that you want to do, and I think I can point you in a better direction. The JS Brains repository is most likely going to be the destination, and in that project, I've pulled out all of the important, the critical, the essential components of Smart Connections. I've pulled them out so they can be reused, based on the same development principles I use in Smart Connections, so they can be used by other developers, because I think those principles are real important. Just to recap what those principles are, like minimizing dependencies. There's like a lot of reason to move fast and just like utilize whatever is at your disposal. So like in the case of like AI, a lot of that like means like, okay, let's use LangChain, or like let's use these other like really comprehensive libraries that they use SDKs from every single platform out there. And then each of those platforms further depends on additional libraries. So next thing people use Obsidian because they want a local, private, trustworthy solution for their notes. But if you're installing community plugins that have tens of thousands of lines of code written by somebody that was not the plugin developer, I think that's a misstep. And, so that's why the JS Brains project, which is, all of my components that I'm developing for implementing smart environments, where one of the like key objectives is, privacy and security, that's why minimizing dependencies is an important development principle, and, why you would want to use the JS Brains project components rather than these other options. So that's principle number one for the JS Brains project, is minimizing dependencies. The next principle is making sure that these components are compatible with the smart environment. The smart environment is this architecture that I've been developing. Basically it makes it easy for you to say, this is what the AI should have access to. This is the method for reviewing any actions that are taken, and basically just, making it easy to the AI system you're working with, and I think that just falls right in line with the mission of empowering individuals, empowering people to benefit from this technology. It's necessary that, you have a personalized version of the tool that you want to use. So, on the other hand, You can look at, so like AI has been used in Facebook, for a decade. And that AI is used to curate your newsfeed so that Facebook can sell more ads. Your personal smart environment is that for you algorithm that's maintained by, configured by, and trusted by you. And the last important principle of the JS Brains project is to use the adapter pattern. So for everything from the chat models to the embedding models to the parsing or chunking processes, face that you need to integrate with the smart environment. However, so obviously for the embedding and the chat models, you have all these different platforms. So you need adapters for those platforms. But then, for chunking, that means like making blocks, like, breaking down your really long notes into like more manageable pieces that might be surfaced at the right time. Like maybe you don't need the top half of the note, like the piece of content that you need to see is, in the bottom half, and it's just this like one little section. Like that's where chunking or blocks come in, the block level embeddings. Adapters in that case will be for various file types. You can imagine right now we have Markdown, we have the Canvas adapter, the Obsidian Canvas files. Earlier in another issue, like I added a feature request for an Excalidraw adapter. There can be a PDF adapter, so like this is another way that adapter pattern is a like key principle in making the JS Brains project accessible, so one that I'm, working on personally in the short term is a JavaScript adapter, so I want to pull like some of my code into my Obsidian and see where that goes, so like instead of having like blocks made from just my Markdown notes, like have like blocks made from different JavaScript functions that I've been working on, and, like have those surfaced at the right time. So issue number 180. The data URI scheme file type should be excluded. Okay, so this is a good feature request. I think that it should be moved to the feature request. Smart chunks. Speaking of adapters, smart chunks markdown adapter should put exclude / handle because, there's, like I'm looking at this, base 64, that's a format that the models are becoming more friendly to. So I'm not sure what that would look like, but, exclude or handle the data URL scheme file type. Okay, so let's update that and let's move this to JS Brains. Man. Okay, so that's transferring over. Feel like I'm losing a little steam here. We've got recorded response. I think that'll be it for this video. This is something that the Smart Chunks Markdown adapter should handle, so I moved it to the relevant JS Brains project, and we should have this video response, and my prior discussion about adapters should really illuminate, why that is the place, for this specific feature. Okay, on to the next one.